Hello and welcome to another Silver Alert from the AARPG podcast. I'm Nathan. I'm your host, and we are with Gareth Hanrahan. Say hello.
Hello.
So Gareth is a game writer and most recently worked on the One Ring Moria book. Dun, dun, dun. So it's a new book from Free League. It's an expansion for the One Ring.
The One Ring role-playing game.
Yeah. So how did you get involved with this project?
If we cast our minds back to the halcyon days of 1990, I'd never heard of role-playing before. I was a Tolkien fan. Go to my local library. There's people here, they're at Tolkien Week running this thing in a corner. They're like sitting around a table, they had maps of the Prancing Pony, they had little miniatures. I'd never heard of role-playing, no idea what it was. I went, can I have a go? They handed me a character sheet. It began, you are an elf who has passed through Moria. Don't know what this is, but it's the best thing ever. I shall apparently dedicate my life and career to it. So, fast forward many years later, I was working for Cubicle 7, who had the One Ring license at that point. I did some books for them. I sort of hinted, we should do a Moria book, which is like, an obvious choice in the Darkening of Mirkwood campaign. When the license moved to Free League, I kept working, doing financing for them. And finally, we actually wrote the book.
So a lot of folks have commented on the art inside the book. Who's the artist that does most of the graphics in there?
Antonio De Luca did the cover, and also many of the internal stuff. We also have Federica Constini, Michael Galavati, Rudita Betti, Andrea Tintori, Montalto, and Alvaro Tapio.
Thinking about what you said and how you kind of came into this. So when you started role-playing, you hadn't read Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or any of that?
Oh no, I read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit long before I started role-playing.
Okay, all right.
My mother introduced me to Lord of the Rings when I was 8. And it was our family tradition. The story told that my uncle, when he was about the same age, read it and went, is Gandalf really dead?
Traumatic.
Indeed. So no, I've been reading Tolkien since I was very, very young. And being able to combine Tolkien and role-playing is an immense privilege.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure there's so many, not just the role-playing fans, but the Tolkien fans. If you get something slightly wrong, what are they going to do to you?
I mean, there are more militant fandoms than Tolkien fans. I mean, one thing that you learn when you start Tolkien is he revised himself a great deal and contradicted himself. But as part of going preparation for Moria, I went back to the History of Middle-earth books, which are the books Christopher Tolkien wrote, basically tracking how the book evolved. And you compare Tolkien's early ideas to Lord of the Rings to what finally happened, and they're so vastly different. Like the famous one is Strider Aragorn started out as Trotter, a hobbit with wooden shoes. Or the moment that created Lord of the Rings was where the rider shows up in the Shire and sniffs. And in Tolkien's original version, he went, and then Gandalf threw back his hood and said, hobbits, I found you. And then he crossed that out and went, hey, Dark Rider sniffed the air. And he had no idea what that was or what it meant. And kept going from there.
That's really good. So you really become and going through this process, you've become more of almost like a scholar of Tolkien and the stories.
I mean, I wouldn't say scholar. There are real Tolkien scholars out there. I would just be someone who has taken their work and tried to. One of my sort of precepts for all the One Ring books do is anything. I would create as possible to tie stuff back to Tolkien. Like, for example, in the Moria book, there's one possible counter is with these goblins who've got minor, lesser rings of invisibility. And that was an idea that Tolkien had in the original draft of The Hobbit, which took out of the original draft of The Hobbit, but it's in John D. Radcliffe's History of the Hobbit books, which are sort of things. Tolkien didn't use that, we can. Like, similarly, in Darkening of Mirkwood, there are these 3 giant spiders, and the names for those were from an old draft of Tolkien. So basically, wherever I can, I sort of go, okay, I won't create my own stuff. I'll take something Tolkien did and either discarded or abandoned or just changed, and I'll build on that.
hey, you should repurpose the original ideas he had, and go from there. That's really great. So I was going to ask you too about what are the things that folks that have already started playing the One Ring? What are the kind of the new things that you're introducing in the Moria book?
Well, the main thing with the Moria book is it's designed to be very, very flexible. It's supposed to make it your Moria. The first chapter I wrote for it, and in some ways the most important chapter, isn't like the dungeon guide or the NPCs. It's a chapter on basically how to keep the feel of Moria, how to use it in your games. Because Tolkien is to do a proper Tolkien game, so much is with the feel of it and the tone and keeping true to his themes. So once you get that right, the rest of the game flows quite naturally. But there's stuff in there for basically either passing through Moria, like the Fellowship using as a shortcut, or a full-on campaign which trying to reclaim Moria. And there's an appendix in there for playing through Balin's expedition, and that ends horribly.
That's those are my favorite games where things go poorly. So it's exciting.
I feel like the players know, not that they can't win, but know that it is a tale of doomed heroism, and there will be a solid ending to the campaign, a climax.
Yeah.
Then they're okay with the eventual bitch with the Balrog kills you all.
I hate when that happens. So that's great. I'm super excited. I'm gonna probably pick up my copy today over at the Free League booth. But you've done a lot of other products. We're actually in the Pelgrane Press booth, and whenever I see on Reddit or some kind of forum where say, "Hey, what are the best campaign books out there?" and it's always this guy right here, the Dracula Dossier. This gets mentioned all the time, and I got the PDF of it. I never got the actual book, but people just rave about this story. Can you talk a little bit about this book in Night's Black Agents?
Right. Well, Night's Black Agents is the game of spies versus vampires, Jason Bourne versus Dracula, by the brilliant Ken Hite. And here's the idea for the Dracula Dossier. The core concept of the Dracula Dossier is that Dracula the novel, which we've redone and expanded here, was the novel. It was the after-action report for an attempt by British intelligence to recruit Dracula. They handed it to Bram Stoker to write up their notes because his brother, George Stoker, one of the Stokers, was involved with British intelligence historically. He wrote it a bit too enthusiastically. They released it as a novel, but kept the full unredacted version, which is full of marginal notes, which you really can't see on the camera, but can see on the book and the PDF. And the notes are by 3 generations of MI6 analysts in 1945, 1970, and the modern day. The basic idea is the players get this as a handout at the start of the campaign, and the GM's guide lets the GM improvise a campaign around what the leads the players follow. Because every annotation here is numbered, all the numbers correspond to indexes here. So basically the players go, oh, it's talking about hypnotism, and it mentions some guy called Singleton. You can look up entry 93 in this index, and entry 93 will point to the psychic on page 96.
So it's all cross-referenced.
It's all cross-referenced, where you've got the psychic there, and you've got 3 different takes on him. He can be either a potential ally, a potential working for the British intelligence, or working for Dracula. And you won't know until you actually play through, and the GM picks which interpretation to use. And from every NPC and location and object, there are more links onwards. So basically, you could theoretically just read that, go to one location there, and play the campaign from there, because everything links to everything else eventually.
So I think after hearing that, if you hadn't heard of it before, you can see why people kind of get excited about it as agents versus Dracula, and just tying into the original novel is.
You get to fight Dracula. You get to fight the Balrog. It does not get more iconic.
So that's great that you've been able to do all this. Is there anything else that's in the works that you can talk about right now?
Just out of the convention is another giant campaign. This is the Borellis connection for Fall of Delta Green. Again, it's me and Ken joint, as in he did the outline and I did the actual bulk of the writing. Fall Delta Green is 1960s. You're working for Delta Green before it collapses. So, set 1960s. Burles Connection is based around, obviously, the French Connection and the drug trade. You go across the world, starting in the Far East, on to Turkey, Europe, through Marseille, off to Baltimore in the end, fighting basically the heroin trade and the mythos at the same time.
That's great. Well, awesome. Anything else our listeners or viewers might be interested in before we sign off?
The next big role-playing thing is Dagger in the Heart for the Heart role-playing game from Roland Deckard, which I wrote at the same time as Moria, which was very useful because Dagger in the Heart is this weird, surreal, bizarre, steampunk body horror dungeon crawl. So I could take, anytime I had a weird idea that I went, okay, I cannot use that in Moria because Moria has a very distinct theme. But I could take all the weird, fucked up bits.
Yeah, you can curse. You can curse here.
Thank you so much. The weird, fucked up bits I put with that book. So it's basically a safety valve for Moria.
That sounds fun. When is that?
That is, I hope it will be here, but it's not here. It's in final editing and layout right now. So I suspect Dragon Meat, which is the Christmas convention in the UK.
Okay.
But I will not swear to that.
No, we're holding you to that. So
Fair enough. Okay. If I have to handwrite and hand-bind copies, it'll be there.
Well, Gareth, thank you so much for. I'm going to wipe my hands because I've been holding the mic for too long. Thanks so much for your time, and I hope you have an amazing show. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you so much. Have a good con.